Hey, I'm going to keep this pretty short, but I just had to come on here and address some things that I keep hearing people say, not only on YouTube, but other forms of social media. And the reason I'm addressing it is because I think it's important to not allow false information to go unchecked, particularly in this day and age where information is so readily available on the internet. And a lot of times, what what's happening is people take the information that they see on social media as fact. Okay, so I just want to talk about something because you have a lot of people suggesting that Black women traded in access to Black men for feminist ideals, and that's simply not true. Because you have to understand something. You know, the needs of Black women are completely different from the needs of other groups of women. So, feminist theory for white women initially started as a movement to recognize the fact that they had the ability to do things outside of the home, right? Because the existing ideas in the 17 and 1800s kind of presented white women as fragile people who could not handle a certain amount of responsibility. Those were stereotypes that were promoted by white men. So that's pretty much what feminist theory is for white women, or at least what it meant when it started. Whereas with Black women, we've always been perceived as overly strong, and a lot of those stereotypes and images come from slavery because during slavery we were expected to do the same amount of work as our male counterparts. So for Black women who have embraced feminism or womanism, the idea is to acknowledge our vulnerability, right? And to acknowledge that in some ways, just because we're women, in some ways we are going to be different from men. And that because our vulnerability is not acknowledged, that impacts the way that we're viewed in society, which is what I kind of talked about earlier with the cases of Aisha Frazier and Marsha Johnson, two Black women who were domestic violence victims who were not properly represented by the system. And as a result, in both of their cases, their abusers were not given strict sentences, and both of those women ended up being killed. And you see that kind of play out over and over again in a lot of those cases. And a lot of that happens because people don't recognize our vulnerability. So we're not treated the same ways that other groups of women are. They have actually also done studies that have shown that Black girls are not viewed in the same way as girls of other races. So you see Black girls getting suspended at a higher rate than other groups of girls. And I'm talking about suspended for doing the same things in schools that other girls do. So, Black girls are more likely to be suspended. Black girls are less likely to be viewed as vulnerable and as victims. And so that's really what womanism and feminism means for Black women. And I also want to show this article. I'm just going to put the link in here. It's this article that talks about labor market history for Black women. Now, there are certain concepts within feminist theory that are beneficial to Black women, especially because we have been in the labor market longer than most other women in this country. We've had to work. And so when you talk about, wage parity and addressing the pay gap and stuff like that, those type of things are beneficial for us. But I just want to talk about something. So compared with other women in the US, Black women have always had the highest levels of labor market participation, regardless of age, marital status, or presence of children at home. In 1880, 35.4% of married Black women and 73.3% of unmarried Black women were in the labor force, in comparison with only 7.3% of married white women and 23.8% of unmarried white women. Our higher participation rate in the labor force extended over our lifetimes, even after marriage, while white women typically leave the labor force after marriage. Married Black women have had a long history of being financial contributors, even co-breadwinners, in two-parent households. Okay? So this whole idea that we were trying to trade places with white women simply doesn't make sense. The reason you had Black women create concepts like womanism and intersectionality was specifically to address the fact that we're different. And like I said before, our needs are different. Our roles in our households and in societies have been different. And so that's why over time you have seen more Black women say, well, you know, I would like to be a stay-at-home mom, or I would like to be a wife that works from home. You know, I would like to not have to be in this situation where I have to go out and work just as hard as I would if I were a man. That's not really the same thing that white feminists are saying. Okay? So I just wanted to address that at the beginning. And then I want to quickly talk about the fact that 50-50 splits in relationships are actually a feminist idea. So you have Black men all over social media saying that whether they're married or not, they expect a woman to contribute to the relationship financially. You know, they expect women to pay for dates, even inexpensive dates. You know, I've seen conversations with men complaining about paying for coffee dates and, you know, stuff like that. And what they don't understand is that that is actually a feminist concept. And I'm going to share this now. I'll acknowledge that this source is more anecdotal. I mean, Elite Daily is not really, you know, that research intensive, but I still just wanted to share it. If you're in a relationship where you both pay for everything, that's a feminist ideal. The reason is under white women's feminism, there's this concept that whoever holds the money has the power. And it's a throwback to this old idea that men come to the rescue. Okay? So this whole concept that, okay, well, since both men and women work, both men and women should contribute financially, that's a feminist idea. So if you're dealing with a man who on the one hand says he hates feminism, but on the other hand, he expects you to pay 50-50, you know, he's lying. He's a feminist. He's an ally to those who support feminist ideology. Even the idea that you see where you have Black men on social media saying that they don't want to hold doors open for Black women. He's a feminist if he thinks that. Now, I know some women don't like men holding doors open for them. That's kind of a different conversation. I personally don't mind a guy holding the door open for me because I think it's courteous, but I also understand why some women aren't comfortable with that. But I'm just saying, if you're dealing with a guy who will spend hours and hours on end on social media, talking about why he doesn't feel like he should be chivalrous, that's a man who is a feminist. If you're dealing with a man in a situation where you're married or you're living together and he's not in the position to make sound decisions, he's not in the position to lead the household, or he doesn't feel like it's his responsibility to do that, he's a feminist. So I'm making this so that any Black woman who comes across this understands what you're listening to when you hear some of this commentary from Black men on social media. If they're telling you on the one hand that they feel abandoned by Black women because Black women chose welfare and feminism over Black men, understand either that man isn't telling the truth or he really doesn't understand what he's talking about. Because A, welfare primarily benefits white women. B, in a lot of states now, welfare is not a free ride. In a lot of states, you have to actually prove that you're looking for work in order to keep those benefits, and those benefits are limited to a certain time frame. All right? So if you're listening to these guys on social media saying things like that about Black women and feminism and welfare, like I said, they're either lying or they don't know what they're talking about. Because feminism for Black women has simply been about acknowledging that we are vulnerable in the same ways that other groups of women are. It really had nothing to do with hating anyone else. You can love yourself and uplift yourself, and doing that doesn't mean that you hate someone else. Asking that your experiences be acknowledged is not hating someone else. And pointing out the ways that people erase you is not hating those people. Telling other people that you deserve to be treated as a human being, that you deserve to have your humanity and your vulnerability recognized, that's not hatred. To me, these whole conversations where you see these guys saying, oh, well, these women traded us in for feminism. So what they're basically saying is these Black women had the audacity to assert that they are human beings and have rights. And that's what they're mad about. We can no longer abuse these women and expect them to be silent. Or on the flip side, when you're talking about from a race perspective, we can no longer abuse these women in the labor force and not pay them well and expect them to be silent about it. When you're hearing these men in these conversations saying, well, no, I'm not going to pay to take her to McDonald's, or I'm not going to pay $5 to take her out to eat, that is a man who actually supports feminism. Because if a man truly does not support feminist ideology, then he's going to want to be in the position to provide for a woman financially so that she doesn't have to work outside of the home, so that she doesn't have to contribute 50-50, because that is what the world would look like without feminism. He would want a woman to be in a situation where, okay, she can have a job if that's what she wants to do. She can contribute to the household if that's what she wants to do. But if she doesn't do it, everything will still run smoothly. And mind you, when I'm saying this, because people will always say, well, what if that guy's only 21 and he doesn't have enough money to take a woman out? I'm not talking about men in their 20s. And the men participating in these conversations online, these are not men in their 20s. These are men who are nearly 40 and over. Men who should be at a point in their lives where, if they're not already you know, settled down, men who should be at the point in their lives where, if they're going to deal with a woman on some level, whether it's in a marriage, a committed relationship, or even for guys who just like to casually date, they're at an age where they should be able to take a woman out to dinner and not have a whole bunch of back and forth about who pays for it. In certain societies, a man is not viewed as being fit for marriage if he's not able to provide for his wife and any children that they would have. He's not viewed as being fit for marriage. So what's happening, in my opinion, is that you see a lot of these guys on social media who want to cherry pick what they want to take from feminism. So they say they hate the idea of feminism because, in my opinion, they view that as holding them accountable for certain things that a lot of Black women experience. So they don't like that part of it, but they like the part of it that doesn't require them to be financially responsible in a relationship or a marriage. So I just wanted to point that out. And I think I may have some future conversations about the differences in what women's rights meant, for early Black women who were feminists versus early white women who were feminists, because I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions out there. But anyway, this is going to be my last live for the weekend, I think. So I hope you all have a good weekend, and I will see you guys around.